The Haunting of Hill House is a 2018 horror miniseries which consists of 10 episodes in a standalone season.
We both really enjoyed the show, so for this video, we re-watched and broke down each episode to create our own unique rankings.
Then we merged together both of our lists based on average placements to create our combined and final rankings of every episode from worst to best.
We kept our rankings hidden from one another whilst re-watching, so it'll be interesting to see what we agreed and disagreed on as we talk about what we liked and disliked about each episode.
So, without further ado, let's start with seeing what episode came in last place on our list. The Haunting of Hill House has such amazing rant episodes. Each episode had the perfect piece for this story. So, with that being said, Daniel and I both found episode 2 to be our least favorite. Each episode seems to revolve around each of the Crane children, and this was Shirley's episode. This has some really great parts, but overall felt underwhelming compared to the other episodes. Let's hear from Daniel as to why he placed this last.
This show has such a high quality of episodes across the board, so despite being last in my rankings, this isn't a bad episode at all. Unfortunately, Shirley's story was just the one I connected to the least out of all of the Cranes, so this episode suffered as a result. One aspect I did really enjoy here though was seeing more of the dynamics of the siblings, especially with Luke. The contrast of Shirley paying for Luke's rehab in one scene, then turning him away from Nell's wedding when he turns up high, is a heartbreaking scene, however shows that she has hit her limit of giving him chances.
One of my favorite aspects of the show is the hidden and subtle foreshadowing. For example, based on the first episode, you know something happens to the mom. In this episode, she does her speech to Shirley about how kittens can't live without their moms. In the present day, you see the broken adult versions of the Crane siblings. I think that is amazing writing. And one of my favorite things in this episode is when Shirley is closing up the funeral home and her forever home flickers twice, which growing up the rule was that was time to come home. I just really appreciated how much this all tied into the whole story.
Those little details really do make this show so special, as on every rewatch you will catch and notice new things that you missed before. There's a cool parallel between showing Shirley as a kid at her mother's funeral being too afraid to walk forward, but being comforted by the funeral director, to then now, in the present day, Shirley has taken on the occupation of funeral director as she wants to support other families the way that she received it. I think despite all the great moments in this episode, it was fairly easy to place this one last for me, but now we have the lowest placement out of the way, we can move forward and see what episode came in at 9th place. In at 9th, Ashton and I are in agreement again as we both have episode 7 Eulogy, one of the more uneventful episodes from the show, however still very impactful. Without spoiling our higher placements, this episode came after a hot streak of incredible episodes, so it did feel like a slight step down, despite having some great moments. One moment that stuck out to me in particular was the sad and intense monologue from Mr. Dudley as he warns Hugh about what the house is capable of. Whilst only feeling like a minor side character to this point, it was great to see how amazing of an acting performance the actor was capable of this engaging and emotional performance.
That moment was stunning. I think that Dudley's story was really interesting and their ominous warnings really made you feel worried for the family. The thing in this episode that stuck out to me was how many times Hugh says, "I can fix that." That was the basis of his character, and to see everything falling out of his control was heartbreaking. I also really appreciated when Hugh and Theo had a bonding moment because my heart really ached for him.
It's definitely really easy to feel sympathetic towards Hugh in this show, as you can tell he really just wants to make everything okay. There were some really cool moments, especially in the past in this episode, seeing the policeman interrogate Hugh as he looks absolutely broken, yet we don't know the full story yet. We also saw the planting of the seeds of what Olivia was going through on the lead up to her death, waking up with a knife held to Hugh's throat. And in present day, I also loved Luke's speech at the funeral about Nell, saying how he was born 90 seconds before her, but she was always his big sister.
This show did horror so well and really embodied eerie tones. It was truly a great story, and the added and jump scares were a fun addition. For example, Luke tossing dirt on Nellie's grave, then there's bent neck lady Nellie saying don't, and then scary looking Olivia in the ground pulling him in. That was quite freaky. But what got me was at the end when Shirley's forever home is destroyed and this figure crawls at Leo and Hugh. You really feel like it's getting intense and the house is calling to the kids more and more. This was the first episode that started it all. and it hooked us in. As you can see, this ranked 7th for Daniel and 8th for me. However, this was not an easy ranking. The first shot was stunning, and you knew that this was going to be a very cinematic show. Immediately, you get this eerie feeling and it lures you in. Daniel, what was your introduction to the show like?
I think the show did a fantastic job at getting us intrigued quickly and setting up lots of questions that would get revealed later on. Obviously, the first episode of a show needs to set up who the characters are and the direction of the story, and they knocked it out of the park. I also love how they blend between showing scenes of present day and the past without it disturbing the flow of the episode, as other movies and shows can kind of be jarring when switching up when the story is set. However, most of the things we see in the past relate to what we are seeing in present day and feeds us more information.
I am glad you mentioned that. I thought it was very unique but flowed so nicely. I immediately noticed how well this show did their transitions. It was like art and just so very creative. It really added to why I fell in love with this show. In our Stranger Things video, we see a heavy theme of the first episode just kind of being slow and introducing the characters in the season, but this jumps right into it and does a really great job at hooking you in. You're being introduced to these characters' present and past selves, but not with a lot of information, like why did Nellie go to this creepy house and is dancing by herself? What happened to the mom and why did they leave in the middle of the night? It just creates an eerie yet curious theme for the show. And I love Steve's monologue about not believing in ghosts, yet at the end, he sees Nellie's ghost.
Oh yeah, that was such a great way to end this first episode with a shocking moment like that. It's one of those cliffhangers where you just kind of have to sit in silence for a moment afterwards to recollect yourself. But on the topic of Steve, this episode did mainly focus on him and his career of writing novels about hauntings despite not believing in them. He appears a very stubborn character, however you also get that caring side to him when he catches Luke robbing his apartment.
I would like to add this very interesting little note. So I watched this show when it aired in 2018, and I rewatched it a couple times. Daniel's first time watching it was in 2025, and we watched it together. We started this first episode, but then we rewatched it a few months later. We both recall Steven laying in bed in his investigation and seeing that lady's husband on the ceiling, his mouth open, and the car horn sound coming out of it. But when we started it back, we noticed it doesn't exist. Some other people have also thought that they've seen that as well. So please comment below if you experienced this or if we just imagine it, because now it's our own Mandela effect.
In at 7th, we have episode 3, Touch, which ranked 8th for me and 7th for Ashlyn. The primary focus for this one was the middle child, Theo. Probably the most intriguing of the Crane siblings for me, as she is definitely the hardest to read, as it looks as though her trauma response to Hill House was to close herself off from everyone. In this episode, we see that in modern day she is a therapist, in which she is assisted by her sixth sense in being able to detect and feel other people's emotions via touch, which is why she mostly keeps her hands concealed in gloves.
This episode was very intriguing, as it seems Theo has this special gift. They flash between little and adult Theo using her gift of touch. We see as creepy things happen throughout Hill House, and Theo will sense those things. We see her use this gift in her adult life as she solves a therapy case. I think it was very interesting as the mom is discussing how she is sensitive and how it can run in the family. I think that this is a significant moment to understand Olivia, Theo, and the family.
One scene in this episode that is quite rewarding after completing the show is Theo in her dance room. She's experiencing what feels like ghosts banging on the door, which she then puts down to her siblings pranking her. But then later on in the series, it's revealed that this was Shirley and Nell trying to get into the Red Room. I think just the whole concept of the Red Room morphing to fit whatever each individual wants it to be, so it can consume them, is just a great concept.
Probably one of the scariest scares for me was when Luke is dropped to a secret basement in the dumbwaiter. Like, if I saw that and no one believed me, I'd be pretty messed up too. But here we see how Theo can feel Luke's emotion and even use her gift to find the secret rooms. As an adult, she seems really reserved with her sense of touch, yet she touches Nellie's body, falls back, and sobs. This is really unsettling and a very sad moment. In this episode, we follow this broken family. Luke is missing, along with Theo's Jeep and Shirley's wallet. Steve and Hugh look for him, as Steve explains how the family is cursed with mental illness. Theo and Shirley try to talk, but quickly become haunted. And Luke, well, he's gone to burn down Hill House, but I have a sneaky suspicion it won't go down without a fight.
It felt like the majority of this episode is spent inside of the car and was actually one of the least memorable on my first watch. However, whilst rewatching, I enjoyed this more than expected. The acting from Timothy Hutton was superb in these scenes as Hugh and Steve finally have a real personable one-on-one conversation. Steve finally realising Hill House maybe wasn't what he thought it was, as Hugh revealed that there never was a tree house and Steve might have been seeing ghosts all along.
Now, we can't finish off this episode without talking about one of the best jump scares in the show. This got me good. I often hid my face, but this time I let my guard down and it got me. The family has always seen ghosts, but they constantly ignore their past. I think it was very important for the sisters at this time to see Nellie and face what they needed to before going into the house.
Yeah, that was the only scene from the show that I'd seen before watching, as it had made it onto those lists of best jump scares in media. It's also well worth discussing in this episode the monologue from Theo after that moment, as she breaks down to Shirley about the emptiness that she felt when she touched Nell, and how despite Shirley thinking that Theo had been moving to her husband Kevin, Theo reveals that she was in fact just reaching out into the darkness trying to feel anything, and managed to find him as the light, which finally made her feel something again. Overall, all the scenes with Shirley and Theo in this episode were brilliant, as they finally reconcile at the end, but Witness Marks barely just misses out in the top half of our rankings. Episode 5 now, as we have quite a significant difference in our opinions. 6th for me and top 3 for Ashlyn. I suppose you can consider this the Olivia-centric episode, as we finally get to answer some of our questions about why she was acting the way she was in the lead up to her death. The reason why this one was a bit lower down on my list was because there were moments I felt that were a bit slow and dragged out. However, when the episode got going, then it really became fantastic. We could really feel the pain of Olivia trying to keep it together, however gradually being broken and exhausted by the powers of the house.
I definitely agree that this episode can be slow, and this was actually very difficult to rank. What really persuaded me to rank this episode in my top 3 was finding out what happened that night. I think it does stop the momentum of the show, which maybe is why it feels slow and dragged out, but as being so nosy as I am, I loved finally getting the answers of that night, and I can see why Hugh kept it to himself.
And I think it was also very interesting to spend a whole episode entirely in the past here, but it was quite disorientating not knowing what was real or what was Olivia having one of her dreams. However, that was what made this episode so brilliant, as we could really feel the confusion that Olivia was going through.
Yes, since the beginning of the show, they left these interesting tidbits about Olivia, like how her migraines came back after moving into the house and how they are no longer colorful, just black. The ghost of Poppy convinced Olivia she was dreaming and needed to wake up. She often showed her the twins grown up and dead, and that they needed to wake up too. That is a very interesting concept and explains how she just no longer knows what's reality. When watching this, it makes me question if their fates were already sealed. Was Nellie always bound to be the Bitnick lady? It is also intertwined and so thought-provoking. And the reveal of Abigail being real and how she killed this poor girl was just insane.
Yeah, those moments of her seeing Luke and Nell of the future being dead was crazy, as the show further leans into that whole concept of time not being linear. One of the creepiest moments from the first episode was Steve and Hugh escaping the house as he suspects a ghost was trying to open the bedroom door and then chases them down the hallway. But to reveal that this was just Olivia in her confused state was a shock to discover. You really do feel for Olivia, but you also understand why Hugh acted the way he did on that night in response to what he saw. And then after her tragic death, as the house falls silent, we get a really emotional and hard-hitting ending to the episode.
After Olivia wakes up, it gets to them walking into the house for the first time. Everyone is excited, the lighting is warmer, and it's a very wholesome moment. As the kids go on to find their rooms, Hugh chases after them. He turns around and asks Olivia if she is coming, and she says to go on without her. He replies, "How could we?" That was just such an impactful scene to me, and such a great way to end the episode. What an episode. I think this episode was so tragic, yet gorgeously written. This episode follows Luke in his journey of addiction and rehab. I think Luke and Nellie had the most gut-wrenching characters. We see how younger Luke is constantly not believed, yet is seeing these terrifying things, which really plays into his adulthood.
This one just made it into my top 3 as it did such a great job at making you feel emotions. This episode also made me a big fan of the actor Oliver Jackson Cohen, as his performance throughout this was so good. Finding out his true intentions behind robbing Steve's house added a ton of sympathy for him, and then seeing him being abandoned by Joey as he is unknowingly suffering from Nell's death, despite not understanding why yet, just makes your heart break for him even more.
Yes, I loved that aspect of this episode on how he was feeling Nellie's death. He woke up at the time of her death, like the other siblings, yet he was complaining about his neck and freezing the whole episode. We are really able to feel for Luke this episode. He has this system he created as a kid of counting to 7 to protect himself, and you see how much he really can't handle his past. One sad thing was that he was 90 days clean, but because of Nellie's death, he wasn't doing so well, and it was very similar to withdrawal symptoms, which he actually had just explained to Steve months prior. So it makes him look very guilty. He asks for reassurance of Steve to believe that he is sober, and that is the basis of his character, not being believed.
There was also this really creepy scene with Luke as a kid at the house. This moment literally makes you hold your breath as it's so suspenseful, as little Luke is hiding under his bed and the ghoul is floating around searching for him. I'm not sure why this ghost in particular is tied to Luke like the bent neck lady is to Nell, so let me know in the comments if you do know why. But I like how still in his older years he is followed by this ghost, constantly feeling like it's over his shoulder, which I think symbolizes the grief and fear that has followed him his whole life. Just a beautiful episode all around, but not quite enough to get into our joint top 3. Making it onto the podium places of our joint list, we have the finale, Silence Lay Steadily, and this one is very gut-wrenching. Whilst the horror aspects of this show are incredible, what makes this one of my favourite shows are the emotional and impactful moments. For example, the scene where Hugh reveals that he had taken his life so that the kids could escape the house hits really hard. Stephen discovers that after always being resentful towards his dad over how he handled the events at Hill House, he now uncovers that Hugh only overall was trying to protect him and his siblings from the truth. The moment where Hugh says how proud he is and says goodbye to Steve, passing the secrets of the house over to him, and then transforming from his current to former self, welcome into the Red Room by Nell and Olivia, really is a perfect scene to me.
I mean, I don't think I can get over this. I hysterically cried for Hugh and it shattered my heart. All he ever wanted was to protect his kids, and it ruined them. I could go on and on about this, but this episode was just so unique and captivating. I was intrigued with each of the children experiencing a haunting in the Red Room. Immediately starting with Steve in the normal future, it just felt so eerie, as it was supposed to trick us. To be able to come up with these storylines is absolutely genius.
Yes, that fake out of Steve's future was brilliant, as originally it did seem like a lazy way to skip past everything, but then it turned out to be a brilliant twist. As for the other siblings, Shirley confronts her past as finally the man at the bar is shockingly revealed to be an affair of hers from years ago, which she has been haunted by since, kind of explaining why she was assuming the worst with Theo and Kevin, as she was potentially projecting her own guilt. Theo and Luke also had to face their own hauntings as they learn more about themselves before everyone wakes up.
There are just so many elements in this episode that were astonishing. Luke is seemingly in between life and death. The Red Room is all white, with Olivia hosting a tea party with little Nellie and Abigail. Little Nellie is still protecting Luke by telling him to go, and I thought that scene was really intriguing. I also loved that Nellie came back to officially say goodbye to her siblings. The Red Room reveal was absolutely genius. Throughout the show, you will notice the kids will talk about their specific rooms, and someone will say, "What room?" The house, as Nellie says, put on different faces and preyed on them. I thought that was really interesting and such an intricate part of the show. And then Nellie, her goodbye to the siblings were so tragically heartbreaking.
I haven't mentioned it yet in this video, but this episode especially highlights how perfectly the soundtrack fits this show. It's eerie and unsettling, but also the long pauses between the notes make the music feel incomplete and almost like something's missing, which kind of mirrors the emptiness that the characters feel throughout this with their grief. I also love Steve's final words for this finale being almost identical to the ones in episode 1, however changing, "Those who walk there walk alone, to those who walk there walk together."
Yes, it was so very satisfying finding out all the answers and Steve finally understanding. It's just so sad it took them to get to this point, and the dad's final sacrifice was gut-wrenching. It's easy to look at Olivia as the villain, killing her kids to be with her, but all these characters are so complex. The house fed on her, and she was left alone. You want all these characters to have a happy ending, but as the show focused on a ghost story, it also had undertones of mental health and trauma, and we were able to see this family healing through tragedy. This episode was so well crafted and breathtakingly captivating. Although all the episodes switched between past and present, this one had an interesting parallel between the two. This episode follows two stormy nights: the present, where the family gathers at the wake for Nellie, and the past, when Hill House is being destroyed by the storm and Nellie goes missing. This episode is spooky, and it seems as it starts as one shot, which adds such an interesting dynamic, and it feels uneasy.
That was genius from Mike Flanagan to have this episode filmed in long continuous shots instead of adding loads of cuts and edits, as the atmosphere in the room was palpable and felt so authentic. Seeing everyone's interactions with one another was tense and also devastating, as you could feel the gap in the family now that Nell was gone. This was also the first real glimpse into how present-day Hugh is coping, as it's evident he is still talking with and sees Olivia.
Yes, this episode was very emotional. It was devastating when the dad went to go see Nellie in the casket and he saw little Nellie. He also sees bent neck lady Nellie, which I thought was interesting that they had him see her this episode. Luke is also suspecting that ghostly hauntings are happening, but as we see with his family, nobody wants to talk about it. As little Nellie cries, saying no one could see her, it echoes as we flash back to present day as Nellie stands by the casket and they all leave. That was just on another level for me. It was a stab to the heart.
That was yet again another brilliant ending to an episode and was so effective. There were some massive conflicts throughout this episode, as you had Steve confronting his dad as he finally wants real answers for what happened, even letting slip that he thinks the wrong parent died that night. And then the blood money controversy, as well as previously believed that the whole family turned down Steve's commission payments for his controversial books. Theo was in fact taking them, and Kevin was also taking them behind Shirley's back. I also want to finally make a note on how the casting for the young and old versions of the characters was flawless in this show. But Hughes in particular, I can't get over how similar the mannerisms and expressions are from both actors who portrayed him. But unfortunately for Two Storms, there's only one episode that is able to top our rankings. And unanimously in first place is of course episode 5, The Bent Neck Lady. We had spent the first 4 episodes focusing on all the other siblings, so now to round it up, this episode focused on Nell. And as we already knew from everyone else's perspective, Nell died at Hill House. So we were of course intrigued to find out how it all transpired. We dived into Nell's last few months before her tragic end, seeing her romance blossom and her wedding, then how she tragically lost her husband in what appears to be paranormal circumstances. Then, as the title of the episode suggests, Nell is still very much being haunted and tormented by the bent neck lady, which she has experienced since being a kid. Similar to how Olivia lost her sanity and grip on reality, Nell also gradually goes down this path, which was tragic to watch but was a very well executed parallel between the two characters.
I agree. There's a very well executed parallel between Olivia and Nellie. Even though this is a ghost story, it also focuses on very real themes. She has this beautiful love story, but unfortunately it ends in tragedy. She has to deal with the grief of losing her husband and her mom, as well as losing all sense of reality. And I think that those are very real themes that others can relate to. But back to the ghost story, she seems to go through life having these moments of peace and the moments of hauntings. Her siblings often see her as erratic and they don't always believe her. She sees a therapist and she tells him about Hill House, and he tells her it's just a house. It's just a carcass in the woods. And if she were to go to the house, she would realize that. That would ultimately lead to her tragic ending.
Nell goes to the house and it completely messes up her mind, as inside she sees all her family in some really sad scenes, as we also see that she's actually just all alone wandering around the abandoned building. It becomes clear to us that after thinking Nell took her own life at Hill House, she was in fact just tricked and manipulated, even being pushed into her death by the ghost of Olivia, wanting to wake her up. That moment where her neck snaps from the rope and everything goes silent in the show, your sadness on seeing the reality of her death then quickly changes to utter shock, as it's revealed that Nell all along was the bent neck lady and had been haunting her past self. This shocking reveal generally might be the best plot twist I've ever seen, and gives me goosebumps every time as we revisit all of her encounters, but this time from the perspective of the bent neck lady.
I very much agree with you. That was such a shocking plot twist, and the fact that she's been haunted her whole life by herself is mind-blowing. Nellie is just a character that embodies sadness. She gets to the house and it's everything that makes her happy and finally at peace. Her family, her mom, and her husband are all there waiting for her. When the house is showing her what she wants to see, it has very warm lighting and it feels comfortable, but you know that something's off. And then it shows the reality of her in a rotten, dark house. I found that contrast very cinematic, like she lives in darkness but searches for the light, which I love and adore how they did the lighting for the show. Another moment that stuck with me is when Olivia puts the rope around Nellie's neck. At first it's shown as a necklace, which little Nellie had asked her mom for, and then it changes into a rope, which makes this scene such a sad moment between the two. I thought it was unbelievable how they did the transition of her falling into the past as a bent neck lady. That was so creative and well executed. I just adored this episode. It had all the best aspects of the show. It was creative, tragic, eerie, and hauntingly beautiful.
So that concludes our ranking of every episode from Haunting of Hill House, a show that we enjoy so much and contains so many great scenes and episodes.
If you enjoyed this video from us, you can also check out our video where we recently ranked every episode of Stranger Things from worst to best.
Also, please like this video and subscribe to show your support, as well as comment down below what shows or movie franchises you would like us to rank in the future.
Thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye!